right?
Yeah, but the people who work for news organizations are good reporters, and they will, you can rely that what they're saying is probably accurate. But there's the first point. You talk to the reporters at a news agency like Reuters, they will say, our job is not to tell the truth. Our job is to be accurate. Well, now what's the difference? The difference is this. If George Bush stands up and says, there are weapons of mass destruction all over Iraq, the agency reporter's job is to report that accurately. It is absolutely not an agency's job to check and discover whether that's true. If it says the earth is flat, then that will be reported accurately. It's up to the news organizations to discover whether or not it's true. They're different words. So that, and we did a lot of research on this. I mean, there were statistics and percentages attached to these conclusions. But to an enormous extent, a newsroom is now sitting there recycling that agency copy without checking. So if you want to mislead the world on a subject, it isn't difficult anymore. You don't have to go in to a smoke-filled room and have a big cigar with the proprietor and then interfere with the journalist. It's much easier than that. Just stand up and say it. And if the agency reports it, it's on its way into the news. And then over here, you have the PR industry.
Sorry, before you get to the PR industry, is this how it went wrong with the weapons of mass destruction?
Partly.
This churning, Flat Earth News? How did that work?
Yes.
Did you find it out how it went wrong?
So if you look at the weapons of mass destruction, I mean, there were tens of thousands of stories. I haven't done this research, but if we said, how many of those stories were checked? How many of the reporters went out and tried to establish whether those WMD are there? I mean, it would be less than 1%. I mean, this is staggering, but that's normal. And there are some reporters who would say, oh, well, how the hell am I supposed to know if there are WMD in Iraq? Well, there are two answers to that. One, if you don't know, don't fucking say they're there. What are? You're a journalist, not a fantasist. But the second thing is, you can check. You can check. Do you remember there was a weapons inspector, retired, called Scott Ritter? And whenever possible, he would come up on radio and television and say, hang on a minute, I was there. I don't think the WMD are there. There was Hans Blick, this long-suffering Danish guy in charge. And he was being terribly even-handed. But at the end of the day, he was still looking, but he never found. Listen to Hans, listen to Scott. Go and talk to them and find out who else they know who's working in the same profession. There are sources
there. So why didn't journalists listen to them?
Because so this gets to the underlying thing. This is a complicated picture, slightly difficult to put out in a meeting like this, but...
We have the time.
Okay, so the underlying problem is that the resources, the money, are being sucked out of newsrooms. We did a big piece of research and found that the amount of space in a printed newspaper that was being filled by the average national news reporter in the UK had trebled over the previous 20 years, right? So they're filling 3 times as much space as they used to. And if you turn that around, it means that story by story, each of those reporters has, on a rough average, only a third of the time to do each story, because they've got fewer resources in the newsroom. They're having to do more stories each day. Now, if you take away time from a reporter, you're taking away their most important raw material. It's like taking away the steel from people who are making cars. We can't do our jobs properly anymore. We can't go out and find stories. We can't check. So then we start to rely on the agency copy and the PR material. And then you ask how much, we did ask, how much of this is being checked? Because the answer you want is 100%. I've got a feeling the answer we came up with was 12% of the stories showed evidence of being checked. This was on a huge survey of stories. That's terrifying.